The reason why this topic, I suppose, came to mind as something that we wanted to focus on is that we realised that within our network at BYP, a lot of Black young professionals come from faith-based backgrounds, whether that's they grew up in church, attended the mosque when they were younger, or just grew up in a spiritual household in general. And it played a big role in shaping identities in purpose and resilience. But in corporate spaces, you don't necessarily have dedicated space to speak about these things. So we thought we'll bring a conversation like this into the BYP network. And this roundtable today is all about making space for this conversation and hearing more about how faith shapes our decisions, identity, and how we navigate work lives. So we've got a really great panel on today, and I'm really looking forward to introducing them shortly. But before we get into that, I thought I'd just give you guys a bit of context into how today's kind of going to run. So we're going to have quite an interactive session. So as I mentioned, for those of you who may have missed, we do have a mentee board, which you can scan the QR in order to take part in. So it's just going to be interactive questions throughout the session today. And yeah, please be respectful. And yeah, we're going to have a final Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions that come to mind for our panelists, please make a note on Menti, and then we'll be able to get the panel to answer them at the end. So great. Into introducing our panel. So I'm really excited for our panel today. I think they're all going to be able to give such valuable contributions into this conversation on faith in the workplace. So I'm going to give them all a few minutes to just introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Jibril. So if you're comfortable, please feel free to unmute and introduce.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, and hi everyone. My name's Jibril. I am a data visualization consultant in London, and I currently work for Accenture. My day-to-day involves essentially changing complex data and creating stories and sort of visuals that help sort of people understand what is being shown and sort of identify any sort of opportunities. Outside of Accenture, I'm also one of the event organizers for the London Day Visualization community. We organize basically a series of events for people to share their experiences and knowledge with people who are just joining in the field. Outside of work, and when I'm not working in data, I enjoy going on hikes, playing games, and recently been trying to learn how to 3D print. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for coming along. And Demi, I'll let you go next.
Hi everyone, my name is Demi. I'm currently a client success partner at Gartner. So I work within their corporate conferences division, service delivery based, and just putting together conferences for different business solutions as well. Within Gartner, I'm also the regional lead for our Black Employee Network. And outside of work, I love to champion Black excellence. So I'm also part of the Black Talent Awards. I head up the youth judging panel there. And then I also just like things like cooking, food, and also all things to do with music and concerts.
Lovely. Thank you for coming along today. And Gabrielle, last but not least.
So hi everyone, my name's Gabrielle. A lot of people call me Gabby, and I'm a chartered accountant with a background in financial services at EY. But I'm also a corporate podcast host at EY. I'm a speaker, workshop facilitator. I'm also a Christian, so I'm really glad to be on this panel today for this roundtable. So I regularly create and host content that really explores how to live out my faith authentically. So in the corporate space, sports, beyond everything like that, just how to live out your faith in life really. So I'm really passionate about that, and I'm a passionate speaker on neurodiversity as well.
Lovely, lovely. Well, thank you all three of you for joining today. And just a warm-up question for us to get into the vibe of the conversation today. My warm-up question for the three of you is, when did you first realize that faith would shape part of your career and how you show up at work? I know for some, it's a journey of they may have grown up in church and may have strayed away in their late teen years, early 20s, and then maybe rediscovered their faith and wanted to really be more intentional about their work life with that. For you guys, did you go through a similar experience? Was there like a defining moment that you can think of where you were like, yeah, this is going to change how I show up at work? It'll be great to hear more about what your experiences have been like.
I'm happy to go first. So I don't think I have a specific definitive moment where this happened, but I think it was more of a process of learning how to stay true to myself and not trying to fit in with the the model of what a corporate young Black girl or just a corporate person should be in general, rather actually bringing in my beliefs that, as you said, I've learned since I grew up in church as a young girl, and then I've taken on to being a young woman of today. So it's more of like a process of continually learning how to stay true to myself and stay true to my values. I would say it's more of a process for me rather than a definitive moment.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. What about you both? What's your thoughts?
For me, I was just going through a really tough time in my life, so my faith really helped me through that. And then when I was, getting stronger in my faith, I realized that I spend a lot of time at work. So I was like, I can't just be like a Christian outside of work when a lot of my day is in work. So I knew that there was a need for me to bring both of those together, but I wasn't really aware of how I could do that. I didn't know how to do things in the right way. But I think it was coming out of that really difficult time in my life. I was like, I can't separate the two. And then it's like Demi said, it's been like a journey, being able to do it. It's still a journey now, but I think it was after that time in my life that was quite hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, completely agree with everyone. So as a Muslim, for me, when I was looking for the area I kind of wanted to get involved with, it sort of aligned with a lot of the values that my religion sort of teaches us. I always wanted to get into areas where I can sort of help other people and sort of make things a lot easier, either provide some sort of support in those kind of stuff. I can't think of any sort of specific moment. It's just been various chapters. So like in secondary school, it sort of got strengthened a lot because of the people I hanged out with, and we each sort of reminded each other, made sure we were always trying to be on the right path. Then, uni, you're going through courses and stuff like that, little stressful periods. So you really lean on prayer and stuff like that. So yeah, I would say there's just various chapters throughout my life, no specific moments really. And yeah, it's every day you're just trying to be better than what you were yesterday.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you with that. And I feel like what you mentioned there was really interesting as well in terms of the role that community plays in that, and you really being able to be bold and step out in the faith that you do have. So that's a really good point that you raised there. So what I want to do now is get the audience involved. It'd be great to know more about where you all are at in your faith journey, what faith groups that you belong to. So if you scan the QR code, for those of you who haven't yet been able to, you'll be able to see this question on your slide, which is all about what faith or belief systems you currently identify with, if any. So it'll be great to get some responses on this if you're able. So I'll give everyone a few minutes to get that in. All 50-50 split. Okay. Okay, we 75-25. Seems mostly Christians and Muslims as well. Okay, great. Well, it seems like we've got, I suppose, a mixture of two of the biggest religious groups. So that's amazing. A shame we don't have any other variety, but I suppose it's great that we do have a mixture of both here today. And this leads quite on nicely to identity and I suppose how the belief systems that you do have influence how you go about your day-to-day life. So my question for the panel now is, how does your faith influence your personal identity and values? So that could be like faith isn't something that you just put on as a top and then you just take off one day. It's really embedded into, I suppose, the core of who you are. So for you guys, how would you say that your faith really plays a role in those values that you hold so dear?
I don't mind going first. For me, it's similar to what I said previously. Is kind of made me, open to sharing and sort of helping other people, and then also this idea of being, I guess, resilient. So being able to pick yourself back up when things don't go the right way that you were hoping they would go. Um, working in a sort of corporate world, everyone kind of goes with believing that it's sort of like a rat race, and everyone has to, fend for themselves and have this sort of scarcity mindset. But then as a Muslim, you believe, everything is in Allah's hands, and, He's able to provide when you sort of put good out in the world. So things like that have sort of influenced me to get more involved in, areas I might have not been involved in when I was growing up. So things like, mentoring, organizing events, essentially creating these spaces to sort of encourage people to share their knowledge and just, feel more comfortable. And I found that it sort of results in having better relationships at work, that are a bit more genuine. And, it's one of those things where you help someone, you like to think that they will eventually help someone else and, make things a lot better.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off of that. I think your point about helping others and how you treat other people being something that's really been influenced by your faith is what I can kind of take on for myself as well as a Christian. I think as a Christian, you are taught to love yourself and love others like you love yourself. And so loving your colleagues, even though they may annoy you, is something that I really had to dig really deep into myself for. Like, I've had to show love and patience to people that irritate me to no man's land, and yet God calls us to love them the way that Christ would have loved them. And so I think those are things that like have influenced my values in the workplace and how I carry myself. Also, things like how you want to be perceived is important. Do you want to be perceived as someone who's short tempered or someone who is you can never have like just a calm conversation with them? No, because that's not what your religion like displays about yours. That's not what Christ wants from me. And so always have to temper myself and make sure I'm really demonstrating those fruits of the spirit, whether it be patience, whether it just be calmness or kindness, things like that. So I definitely think that's how the way I treat people is basically, I think, the epitome of how my personal identities and values have been influenced by my faith in the workplace.
Yeah, that's a strong answer.
Yeah, and for me, I definitely agree with both what they both said as well. I feel like for me, my faith just keeps me really accountable, especially in the workplace. So I'm in financial services, which is very, very fast paced, and sometimes people can just be so rude, like clients, like Demi mentioned, colleagues sometimes. And if my response honestly would be so terrible if it wasn't for my faith. Sometimes I can catch myself wanting to say something, maybe it's because of my background, but I just want to say something, but I'm like, no, this is not how you respond in love. So I think my faith has really helped me build really great relationships. And I've seen how just being patient with someone has meant that, I've had better talks with them and then they've ended up helping me in my career in some way. And it's only because I was patient with them or because in that moment I didn't give them a piece of my mind because I was like, okay, I want to make sure I'm representing Christ as an ambassador, as a Christian. So it definitely keeps me accountable. And yeah, it's very, very needed in my workplace, I think, for me.
No, I definitely resonate with that, especially the part that's on like just pausing for a second, not necessarily being so quick to respond in your flesh and how you may want to respond back when someone's being really slick mouth or being really disrespectful. Having that second to just stop and kind of reflect on, I'm not just representing myself here, I'm representing something bigger than me. And that's something that really tends to keep me rooted at moments where I feel quite similarly to you guys. So my next question is, have you ever felt the need to downplay your faith? So one of the things that I found interesting through speaking to a lot of Christians on various points in their journey, I'm a Christian myself, if I didn't mention, is that some feel the need to maybe not be as outspoken about their faith in certain rooms because they feel they may be penalized for it or treated differently in team building exercises and things like that. So have you guys ever felt the need to downplay your faith, or how do you navigate it in situations where it may be a bit difficult? For example, when there's work drinks and there's no other activities, or where you may have to adjust your schedules based on your fasting. How do you find that?
Yeah, I think for me it was probably early on in my career, and specifically on the point around, you know, the work socials being centered around pubs and drinking. Um, as a Muslim, I don't drink, so being in those situations can be very uncomfortable. And because you're at the start of your career, there's almost this sort of pressure. I don't know if it's one of those things that they're like forcing upon you or whatever, but you just sort of come in with that sort of mindset and feel the need that you have to be there to sort of not miss out on any opportunities and you know, that team bonding aspect. So yeah, I think there were times when I first started off to sort of go to those, and then the best way that I sort of responded to that is essentially removing myself, but instead of just removing myself and going silent, I tried to also bring about some sort of change. So, being a bit more vocal, trying to send some recommendations to the people that are organizing these socials. Like, here are some places where, you can have your drinking activity that you'd like to do, but there's also something else for people that don't drink, like some sort of activity. And that way they can still be involved and still be able to network. And I feel like it also brings about good stories, being a bit competitive with people. And then, yeah, I think this whole aspect of, being vocal, it's important because people can generalize if they see one person who is still coming up, and they'll be like, oh, but this person's the same religion, they were okay with it, how come you're not? By being vocal, you can sort of bring about that change and make it not, I guess, generalized.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you with that. I think that's a really good point with like not making it just generalized, but also it takes a lot of boldness for you to then stand in that room and really say, oh, perhaps we could actually do something different. So I really commend you for that. Have you found that in workplaces that you have worked in, you've been in the teams and stuff that you've worked within, have you been one of the only Muslims, or has there been a few
No,
typically?
no. So, at my place, there's, I think, over 700,000 people, maybe 800,000 people
Oh,
globally. So it's
oh.
massive.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of communities within them. So there's the Essential Muslim Network, there's the African Caribbean Network. I'm sure there's other ones for other religions and different cultures. So there's been people that have paved the way and made it a lot easier to sort of have those conversations. And then, sending recommendations is not like, you just need to find out who organizes those events and, maybe even get involved. And it looks good for your story when you want to get promoted, I guess, when you are involved in those sort of extracurricular stuff. So it kind of has a win-win.
No, I hear you with that. What about you, ladies?
You can go ahead, Gabby.
Okay. So have you ever felt the need to downplay your faith? Yeah, so I feel like I've seen a lot of misinformation online about Christians and what they believe, and there are some very, very extreme views, in my opinion. And I think there's that fear that, oh, when you say, oh, I'm a Christian, someone's gonna think, oh, so when I saw on Twitter this Christian saying all these horrible things, is that what you believe? So in my mind, I've always been, well, when I started in my career, I was quite kind of nervous. I was like, I don't want to be that stereotypical Christian, so let me just stay quiet and not say anything about it. And even with fasting, like I fast a lot with my church as well. So like I'm like, I don't want people to think I'm the stereotypical Christians. But now I've realized if I want to help people, if I want to help dispel that myth, that I'm that stereotype, then I have to be visible and vocal. Like Jibril said, I have to be vocal about what I believe, and I have to show people that yes, you can fast as a Christian, and I can be someone that is social and someone that is kind. So I think it's just being more visible and vocal just helps people see that Christians come in all shapes and sizes. So I've now realized that I need to not downplay my faith at work, but I completely understand how someone might do that because you may not have all the answers. And if someone just hits you with a question and you're thinking, I don't know the answer, then you're gonna want to downplay your faith because you can't answer it. But yeah, I'm trying not to now, definitely. But I think I completely understand if someone feels like they have to because maybe they're struggling with that.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to add to what Gabby and Javor said. It's been great. I think not so much downplaying is what I've done, but I think sometimes I missed the opportunity to outplay my faith, if that makes sense. I missed the opportunity to speak about it if someone mentions, oh yeah, I saw this on TV. Or for example, there was a scenario where my colleague was going back home and she was like, oh, I don't want to go to church with my mum and dad, because it's her Christmas service or whatever. And in that moment, I thought this would be a great time to explain why the Christmas service is actually so good, or like, you know, why why it's not just a tradition, but why it actually matters. But for some reason, I just kept quiet. So I guess that is a point of downplaying, but also it would have been a great opportunity to upplay my faith in the workplace. But I guess that just came from, as Gabby was saying, maybe just fear of not being able to answer questions properly, fear of not having all the knowledge, or fear of just being misinterpreted. So yeah, definitely trying to work on that one, but it's not easy because the world obviously is not as kind to religion as we would hope. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But I think through all of your responses, it also shows that element of like evolution in terms of early on in your career, you may have been a bit more timid in how you maybe went to go and express your faith. However, as you've, I suppose, gotten deeper, I suppose, in your belief in your faith, it's also had a knock-on effect in terms of how you show up and those conversations that you do have. And I can definitely resonate with what you said, Demi, in terms of at the end of a conversation, leaving a conversation thinking, oh, I could have actually mentioned something there. That could have been a great opportunity. But I suppose that's what hindsight's for, I suppose. But we live and learn. And so I've got another check-in question for everyone in the audience. I know we've had a few new joiners, so welcome to those who are new. And just as a check-in as well, we have a Menti board. So if you scan the QR, you're going to be able to access it. And we have different questions throughout the call today. So if you give this one a scan, the question is, in one word, how would you describe how it feels when it comes to expressing your faith at work? We've heard from the panel already, and it would be great to hear some responses from the audience in terms of how it feels. I think challenging, that's a very real one. It's a very real one. Oh, look at that. What contrast. Interesting. Let's see if we get any other responses. Come on, any more? We've got two complete different ends of the spectrum at the moment. There must be some gray area within this. Dangerous. I think dangerous is a really interesting one as well, because danger can be perceived in so many different ways. Is it danger in a sense of, oh, I'm going to be judged for this. This may affect how I'm perceived. So this may affect my next opportunity to be promoted, or this may affect the kind of rooms I get invited into. Weird. Okay, that's another one. Eggshells. Yeah. I think it goes back to, yeah.
Seems like there's definitely sort of definitely a challenge, like some sort of barrier for most of the results, apart from the one that I mentioned, easy. I'd be interested to know like the type of roles people are involved in, whether it's maybe a smaller company versus a big company, maybe different locations where one religion is a bit more pronounced than another one. Yeah, no, there's some interesting answers.
That's a great idea, actually. If anyone feels comfortable, feel free to put in the chat what type of industry or role that you're in. It could be interesting in seeing how that plays a role in the type of way you feel towards this. And I've seen 2 notifications in the chat. Is that in response? I can't see.
Yeah. This is academia, legal.
I suppose it's true that different industries do have a different culture when it comes to how outwardly you can be with your faith, or even different things. For example, when we come to speaking about Black young professionals in the workplace, it could be your hair, it could be your outfits, it could be so many different things. So it's interesting how, I suppose, some sectors you could say are more progressive towards having these conversations about faith, making, I suppose, space for people to talk about faith more openly, whereas other sectors may still be quite stuck in their ways in terms of you show up to work this way, or when you're at work, you look like this, you speak about these things. So yeah, that is very, very, very interesting.
And I think it's not even just you can have different sectors, but it's also about like the size of your organization. For example, the big global firms, like if they're going to want to get investors, like they're going to have to show that at least their employee satisfaction is okay, or they're doing good in diversity. Maybe in the past that was something that investors were really looking for. So faith it comes in that. So it's like if your organization is big on diversity, then you're gonna maybe have a big faith-based network. But if it's a smaller, maybe startup, or it's a smaller organization that investors don't really care too much about that, then maybe that's not what leadership is going to be pushing. And then it may seem like you're the only Christian or Muslim or someone of any other faith in your organization because the network isn't established enough. So it can be different in different industries, but it's also about the size of the industry and I guess what leadership think on this.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
completely
true.
agree.
But don't you think it can become quite performative, let's say from larger organizations where it looks good on paper to show that, oh yeah, I'm an organization that embraces diversity, I'm an organization that embraces everyone from all faiths, and then they just have a room down the hall for, reflective room, but you can pray in it, but people just go in there to chill sometimes, and it's just a room that's there. But oh yeah, on paper, amazing, we're all there for diversity, we're all there for creating inclusive spaces. What's your thoughts on that?
I'll jump in here quickly. I think I've always said to myself, at least, make the most of their performance. If they want to perform, make them dance like a monkey. Do you get what I mean? Yes, sometimes it will be performative, but what can we make the most? How can we make the most out of it? I would say.
I think that's a very good point. I can't see in the chat, but was there anything else that anyone else put? I don't know if any of you want to read out what else was put down.
I can read some out. Someone said, Lauren, who's part of the legal industry, said she's concerned about bringing political things to work. And that's, I guess, why she finds it bringing her religion to the workplace having negative connotations there. But then contrasting that, apologies if I spell your name wrong, Amatella said, I've said easy because I work at Accenture. I think because I was born a Muslim and raised in the Middle East, it's just easier for me to express myself as Muslim because I'm visibly Muslim. So two very contrasting opinions there, which is interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I think it's a very interesting topic when it comes to how different individuals' experience are in navigating their faith at work. So another question for you all on the panel is when it does come to daily practices like Ramadan, fasting, prayer life, how do you balance it with the demands of corporate life? For example, I know many of you have had a really busy day. I suppose for you, Gabrielle, working in chartered accountant type of role, I could imagine it is pretty hectic, pretty busy. How do you tend to balance that with your other corporate demands?
Yeah, it can be quite hard. For example, like on like a day to day, I'll have maybe like a church service or like a fellowship thing after work. So if I'm going through a busy time at work and we're working late, then there's kind of that conflict where I'm like, I need to be at church because I want to like be close to, the rest of my friends at church. But also I've got these demands that I have at work. So it's a bit hard. I think the key thing is just to be vocal. So at least if you know you need to go somewhere Monday evenings, just telling your manager, your team, just to know, just so they know. So it's like, okay, should I work a little bit earlier in the morning so I can leave a little bit earlier or something like that. I think it's just important to be vocal. But then when there's times where it's like fasting, for example, like my church does like a 21-day fast in January, and that January to March in audit is a busy season. So we're working sometimes until 11, 12 p.m. So there was times when I was fasting and doing that. So in those situations, I really had to like take my manager aside to let them know that I may be working at different times to other people. Like I'm not going to be eating dinner in the office with all of you guys because I'm fasting. So can I go home earlier? So with all of this, I think communication has just been so, so key. And it's just about kind of opening up really about like how it's important for me. And I think it's been great to educate people on my faith as well. But yeah, it can be hit with a lot of people being like, "That's not why are you dieting and why are you doing this and all of that kind of stuff." You're gonna get people saying random stuff, but it's about being like true to what you really believe in. It can
Yeah,
be hard though.
I'd love to hear more about your experience in, I suppose, educating people about your faith. How has that been? Has that been usually on the back of you saying, "Oh yeah, I'm fasting." Oh, how come you're fasting? Is it usually gone down that type of route?
Yes, you're on that type of route. Or for example, like I've gone to church every Sunday for my whole life. But someone will be like, "What did you do at the weekend?" And I don't even I never used to even mention church because it just used to be so routine until I started saying, "Oh yeah, I go to church." And then someone was like, "Oh, I didn't know you go to church." So even in that, just educating someone that, oh, this is someone who is Christian isn't just someone you've seen on TV or on social media being however they are. Like they're your people around you, they can be very normal people. So it's in that, or like maybe fasting or something like that. It's just being open to share a little bit. It's not about like talking about political stuff, but it's just my day to day, like what I did on Sunday or what I'm doing after work today. That's a way that you can kind of educate people a little bit into what it looks like day to day.
Have you ever felt like you're... Oops, come on, please.
Oh, sorry, someone just said they brought up church. Oh, I can't see it. I missed it. Oh, so someone said that I brought up church before and they were taken aback, so they've never brought it up again. Yeah, that's the thing. You could face that as well. I think you kind of have to be prepared because it's like if you have in your mind, oh, everyone's going to accept everything, you're going to say something, and as soon as someone is like, oh, that's weird that you go to church or something like that, you're gonna feel like going into a shell. So I think it's always having that mindset that it's like, okay, this may be awkward for people, but just having that in your mindset that could happen can just help you to keep doing it. Like anything you do, people are going to have an issue with, honestly. So it's just about really knowing why you're saying this and just being true to that.
Yeah, absolutely. That was literally what I was going to say. How do you navigate it when people do, I suppose, push back? But it's true. Be true to yourself. That's the best that you can do.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is like compromise yourself. So, I mean, and when situations like that happen, I guess you can sort of ask yourself, do you really want to be in those sort of environments where you're sort of, I guess there's sort of a negative connotation and maybe it's not sort of as welcoming as you first imagined. And then, yeah, so I think it's also like a lesson when you do get the answer that you don't expect, I guess. Um, I think for me, in terms of balancing prayer and sort of even fasting, a lot of it is very similar to what was mentioned about sort of communication. Uh, you don't have to necessarily suffer by yourself, and ha educating people by like maybe having a chat with your manager about sort of adjusting your hours, maybe traveling less when you're sort of fasting. Um, I mean, you're not going to be using your lunchtime to eat, so you're not going to be missing up on any work. You can sort of have those conversations early on and sort of prepare them. And then, as I mentioned, there's depending on the size of the company, like if you come from a large company, you can have the different communities that have already normalized this sort of Muslim traditions and the needs by sort of organizing, lunch and learns and sort of education pieces. So they've done a really good job with sort of preparing that. So for me, it's not been too difficult. We have the facilities available and the places to sort of go pray. And, I feel like this has happened, every year there's been an event around it. So people are aware of it. They just don't know, I guess, when or what date is necessarily happening. Like with Eid, it's not a specific time. Um, it's always like sort of like a window, and then you find out when it's so close to the time. But yeah, I think the best thing is genuinely just sort of communicating, and then that way they can sort of be aware of it.
Mm. Demi, did you have anything to add or?
For this one, I think I'm learning from Gabby and Jibril, to be honest.
Mhm.
I think this is something that I'm still trying to balance and kind of work around because because I work in corporate conferences and events, sometimes when we have our events, I have to go on a Sunday, and that means missing church. And I have never actually thought about maybe making that something that I, you know, factor into my conversations with my manager or people that I'm working with, saying that I'm happy to go, but I need this time to maybe catch up on sermon or read passage of the week or things like that. So I'm learning.
Yeah.
So not too much to add here from my side.
No, and that's what it is. It's a learning journey at the end of the day. But I just want to circle back to something you said, Jibril, just in terms of like your workplace creating room for you to really be able to do that, whether that's through having lunch and learn events to educate people on Islam or any other religions, for that. And also like having rooms, having those conversations, I think is really, really important, just so people are aware of what different beliefs are, what it actually means to be a Muslim, what it means to be a Christian. Because it's something so simple that I suppose when you grow up in a faith group, you almost may take it for granted and thinking, oh yeah, but everyone knows what a Christian is. Oh yeah, everyone knows what a Muslim is. But in a lot of cases, there's some people, some groups who actually haven't actually been connected with any faith groups and could really do with some extra education on actually what it means to be part of that group. And I think that leads on nicely to my next question for the group here. For those of you who don't know, as I've said for like the third or fifth time now, we do have a Menti board, so give that a scan to take part in our next question, which is, do you feel like your workplace creates an environment where you feel seen and supported in your faith at work? So I know Jibril said in his larger organization, it's a lot easier because there are events and spaces. But for you in the audience, how do you guys feel towards this? Well, quite a lot of no. That's really interesting. For anybody who's put no, I'd be really intrigued to, I suppose, hearing more about why you feel no. If you'd be comfortable saying in the chat or equally on meeting, it's up to you. Only 20% have said yes. Let's see if anyone's going to share any opinions in the chat. Maybe not, maybe not. Well, I think we've had a notification.
Yeah, I can't see anything in the chat.
Oh, can you not? Okay. Oh,
But yeah, no, that's it's a massive number.
it is a massive number.
Yeah, so Lauren said, like Sarah mentioned, it's not seen as progressive. I prefer to separate my personal and professional life.
Mm, yeah, and I think that's where some people do sit with this, in terms of having that separation between their work life and then their personal life, and they're not blending the two. But I think it's also still a shame, and I think it just shows that organizations definitely need to do a lot more in making sure that their staff do feel seen and supported. Because I suppose it goes back to what was being said earlier in terms of that performative nature of things. It's like, does support just look like having a prayer room, or does support actually look like, putting in place actionable frameworks, having those conversations regarding faith, I suppose speaking to your employees to find out how they are feeling when it does come to this topic.
Yeah, I would say yeah, definitely it's sad when like you feel like you have to separate personal and professional life, because I can't like that, it's really exhausting. Like I was trying to do that in my placement year, first couple of years of my grad life, and it's just exhausting to have to feel like you have to hide parts of yourself. It can work for a couple of years, but if you think about the age of retirement now, like it's later, like so it's kind of, you need to think about how can you do this in a sustainable way without feeling like work is just, you're a different kind of person. So that's why I think it comes like, it's different for, yeah, someone said it's exhausting, and that's the thing. So it's kind of like you don't have to all of a sudden just come to work on one random Monday and be like, I'm this religion and all of this. You don't have to be like that. But I think it's trying to find ways that you can really still kind of show that a little bit in the way you work. Otherwise it's going to be so tiring, because I could talk about like neurodiversity, trying to hide that, and my faith, I would not be able to do that in a sustainable way. You just get yourself burnt out. So it's sad that organizations don't really give that space. But if you can in any way, like go to a prayer room or do something, I think that's really, I think that's kind of a priority to try and do that.
And I feel like there's possibly a chance that you're not the only one feeling like this at your company. And this whole idea of, strength in numbers. If you put yourself out there, maybe more people will follow, and you can essentially start building your own space that you feel a bit more comfortable to sort of express yourself and not having to have this split identity when it comes to work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I also feel like there's almost been a generational shift as well. Because when I think to, let's say, my parents' generation, for example, it would almost be normalized that your work life is your work life and your home life is your home life, and we do not blend the two no matter what, especially as someone who's part of an ethnic minority group. It's almost normalized that when you go into work, you change your tone of voice, you dress a bit differently, you don't speak about what you did on the weekend. If so, you give them the short story and not the long story. All of those different things. So I definitely feel like there's been a shift in terms of, I suppose, how our generation is even perceiving work life and how our work life careers should be. So rather than the putting on the whole pretense for 60 odd years, we're very much, no, I am who I am. And I'm seeing it even more, even when I look around the office and how much has changed over the years. I remember it could be something as simple as people would only usually have black hair. Now I go into the office, I see all sorts of colors of hair, like people are more open to expressing themselves, which is, I suppose it shows progress and a step in the right direction, I suppose. I saw a notification in the chat. Was that anything else or no?
I feel like I would just say because things are just changing now, we can't really expect it to be easy for us. Like a lot of us as like young professionals, we're kind of paving the way for the next generation to maybe when they come into work, they're going to feel completely comfortable to talk about their faith. But just like it was with when, back in the day a couple of years ago, like there wasn't any other black people in the office except one person. That person had to pave the way for everyone else. Now black people, we can walk into or whatever ethnic background you're from, like you can go into the workplace and see other people looking like you, even if it's just one other person. So I think that's kind of what we have to do right now. That's just the sad reality, and hopefully like for our children they'll feel more comfortable in the workplace, but I think that's just kind of where we are right now.
That's fair. Do you guys think there's anything in particular that's caused that shift in terms of our generation, I suppose, thinking about these things a bit differently?
I think it goes back to what Gabby said, just feeling exhausted. I think a lot of us could see our parents and our parents' generations being exhausted by, they would come home from work and just have no energy left to do anything else. I mean, they still gave us homes, they still provided for us, but other than the provision, it was like there was little life left for them to live. And so I think a lot of our generation have looked at that and been like, we don't want to live that way. Like there's more to life than just this 9 to 5 or whatever hours you work. And so in that we've tried to find ways to um, show up more as ourselves so that we feel less exhausted, and also bring more of ourselves into the workplace so that even if we are spending most of our hours at the workplace, it's not us coming in with a shield or pretense version of ourselves, but actually us. I think that's one of the reasons why there's been that shift. At least that's what I've seen for myself.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I feel like probably like post-COVID as well, there's been a big shift as well. I think a lot more people are spending so much time at home, I suppose it being themselves, that it's very hard, I suppose, to switch between the two when you're not even having to travel a lot of the time.
Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of our generation as like black, well, not just black, but as young professionals, we're kind of getting to the state where we're like mental health, we understand that it's a really important thing. And now we're having squiggly careers, like maybe the older generation, they had to go into a particular career and stay in it. No, like a lot of them are like Gen Z or this or Gen Z or that because we're kind of doing what we want. And I think that's just I think that's so great. And it does get a bit of pushback and we're kind of trying to navigate how to do it. But I think it's a great thing that we're doing. So yeah, we just have to make sure we can stand strong in it because there will be a couple of people not liking that.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. So my next question for you all is how do you bring your faith into your decision making? I know we've spoken about your personal values, but I suppose in a day-to-day job, how does your faith play a role in your everyday decisions, whether that's responding back to an email, carrying out a task?
I think back to what we said, I think right at the beginning is taking a beat, just taking this a minute just to breathe before you want to reply to a disrespectful email or respond in a rude way or things like that. Definitely taking a step back, and also taking what people say with a pinch of salt. I'll give an example. My manager was telling me how I should be a bit more, not boastful, but kind of in a way like talk more about my achievements and things. And I'm just like, God, it's not me. I'm not gonna stand around and be like, look at what I did, look at what I did, because it's just not aligning with my values. And she was like, but that's the only way you're gonna, be seen as one to be promoted and stuff. I'm like, in my mind, God will get me there if it's meant for me. I don't need to stand there and show everyone what I've achieved. So take what people say with a pinch of salt. I mean, some people actually do want the best for you in the workplace, and they're just speaking from what they know. They don't know how our religion works. They don't know how your values or how your faith is built. So I took that with a pinch of salt, and I was just like, I hear you, but no, thank you in my mind. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, that whole thing about taking it with a pinch of salt, yeah, no, definitely agree, because I feel like in my religion, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. Like, I don't necessarily think a comment that was made is meant to be intended as a harsh way. If it does get repeated, then yeah, then it's safe to assume that it was a negative thing. But most of the time, it's just how certain people are and how they talk. Maybe they be a bit more blunt versus a bit more passive. I think one of the things that my religion helps with my work is sort of the type of work I get involved in. So in consulting, you're jumping from like project to project, and sometimes that means client to client. And not all of those clients work in industries that align with my religion. So things like areas that involve interest or alcohol and so on. So throughout the years, I've sort of learned that you don't have to say yes to everything. If you're rolling off a project, there's other things you can do that can, you can pass your time. And understanding that you do have a voice and you can sort of be able to speak on what your needs are. So just after sort of discovering that, it's a bit more easier to sort of navigate. And then because of this, I've refused some roles that have, been, sorry, one second. I've refused some roles that, on the surface at least looked like really great roles, but because of the industry they were involved in, I had to sort of turn it down. But then with my religion, I sort of believe that, one door closes, another one opens, Allah has a plan, and, this just wasn't the one for me. So yeah, I think it's helped with sort of be a bit sort of cherry pick the kind of roles I get involved in. Just because you're not going to be on a project doesn't mean it's the end of the world. You've got some sort of cushion in the beginning, and then you'll likely find something. I mean, there's loads of different industries that exist. There's bound to be another role that comes up, and maybe that one might not be the exact role that you were hoping for, but it's a little. It doesn't result in you sort of jeopardizing your faith and the values that you sort of carry. And yeah, and then it sort of ties into the whole thing of you be the change that you want to see.
No, I definitely hear that. It almost comes down to like, I suppose, living out life faith-based versus being action-based or action-driven. So I remember reading this thing and it spoke about the fact of like people who I suppose have no faith or don't identify with any group, they go through life thinking almost in a scarcity mindset of, oh, if I don't take this opportunity, then I won't get promoted and there's going to be no opportunities out there. But as both Demi and yourself have just said there, like if you have faith, you know that one door closes, another door opens, and what's for me will be for me. And I think it's quite, I suppose, counterintuitive to the way that I suppose the corporate world is fixed, or maybe some of the more senior people in your team may suggest to you, oh, but you should take this, this will be good for your career, or oh, this is exactly the move you should make because this is what's going to look best. But when you have that faith, you know that, God is the author and finisher at the end of the day. So I think that's really, really valuable.
Yeah, and it helps to like, if you're not someone that's as confident in saying, no straight away, I think one, you could, give it a try on something a lot easier outside of work. Just get used to sort of that. I think there's the whole thing of rejection therapy where you put yourself in those situations and get a bit more comfortable. And then also find people that you see as a friend or a mentor or something like that, someone who's gone through various communities or careers. We have there's like an Accenture Somali community, and every day we're trying to find any new Somalis that have joined the practice to sort of make that transition a lot easier. And we've tried creating a space there that essentially makes it easy for you to ask questions. Like people post questions there like, I'm struggling to have this conversation, any tips? And a lot of people come in flooding saying, here's how I've done it, here's that stuff. You learn from other people's experiences, because the chances of you being the first to do it is very rare. Someone has probably done that, gone through that struggle before.
Yeah, that's very true. It's very true. Gabby, did you have anything else to add, or no, nothing on this?
How do you bring faith your decision making? I think this one's quite tough. I think we already kind of discussed it. Like you can have situations that come to you, and it could be a really great opportunity. Like for me, I've had a really great opportunity. Someone's like, I want you to present this, and I'm like, I really would love to do that, but it's on a topic that doesn't align with my values, so I've had to let it go. And it's it kind of helps you understand, or it helps make you stronger in your faith, because then you start to realize, okay, look, I'm ready to say no to things because of my faith. So it helps you like even mentally to know that. And I think that it just helps your faith when you bring it in. So that's why when you have to separate your faith and your faith and work, it's mentally really, really hard. So I think, because I think I mentioned before, for me, faith keeps me accountable. So even when it comes to integrity at work, if you know your manager's not going to be there, my faith, it says, do all work as unto the Lord. So you're supposed to be working as if you're doing it for God, not for someone else. So in those moments, I've got to be like, okay, I can't slack off because my manager's not here. So when you make those decisions that are faith-based, you help to like reinforce your faith for yourself. So it can be hard, but I think it's really, really necessary.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think as you've already said, we've had like comments from those in the audience today who've mentioned feeling as if they have to show up to work one way and then have a separate personal life. And I just thought I'd add one more question for you three on the panel today, of just like, for someone in the audience who is struggling, who's listening along today, is thinking, okay, yeah, cool, sounds good, faith, work, great. What actionable steps or advice would you maybe give for them to take that step forward to live out their faith confidently?
I would say start with baby steps. As Gabby said earlier, no one's telling you to go into the office and wave a banner saying, "Oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that." Like, it's still a professional environment, so don't like maintain your professionalism, but also don't shy away from being who you are. If someone asks you what you did over the weekend, or what do you believe, or if someone brings up a testy subject, that you don't feel comfortable sharing about or talking about, just because it's not something you're comfortable or confident in talking about, just say, I would rather not be in this conversation, or I have nothing to comment or add here, just because it doesn't align or I don't know what to say, then just say it. Don't lie, and don't compromise yourself or your beliefs. So yes, baby steps, I would say. I'm still taking them, so we'll come back and then we'll see how we're all doing.
I love that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Demi. Like baby steps, of course. Like no one's perfect at doing this. But for me, I would say Oh, someone's asked a question to Demi. I don't know if I should just continue or just.
Yeah, sure. What was the question, please, if you don't mind reading it out?
Someone said, oh, it's gone now. Sorry.
I
The
can
chat.
see. So don't you think
Yeah,
that could
maybe
be
you asked, yeah.
seen as quite controversial? So I believe that's to my point of saying you don't want to talk about a specific subject. Of course, people will always have opinions about you, but are you going to stop living your life or fall down and die because people think something? Unfortunately, not. We have to continue moving. So it can be seen as controversial, but that's why I say if your belief is even more controversial than you just staying silent, I think it will be better for you to just say I'm not comfortable or confident in speaking on this topic right now. And if your manager or whoever wants to do a deeper dive into that, then if they create a safe space for you, then absolutely. But if you don't feel safe, then you can communicate, I just don't think this is a safe space for me. And if they want to take that to HR, they can. Like there's little that a company can say. As she also said, I sometimes feel like if you don't comment on things, people feel uncomfortable with that. Absolutely. People can, but there's also think about yourself as well. Do you feel uncomfortable if you say things or if people say things to you? Like it's not just a one-way thing. You also have to think about how you feel in that moment. Are you uncomfortable with shying away or from hiding yourself or from doing all these things to suppress your faith? And if that's the case, then you have to weigh it up in a kind of way. Like, of course, there are some situations where you can't just, you know, blurt out, oh, I think this person shouldn't be in this position or da 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 da. Of course, there's some diplomatic ways you need to go about it. But don't shy away from being who you are. But it's always going to be a roller coaster. It's going to be something that you have to learn every single day. And as I said, I'm still learning how to do it. So if I have a more concrete answer and more concrete evidence, I'll come back and let you know.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like people always talk, and for someone who doesn't like confrontation, for me, like if you like confrontation, you can be fine with that. For me, I really don't like confrontation, and I used to be a very big people pleaser. So if you're someone who is like that, this is going to be what you have to face, and sometimes it just takes you growing in yourself, and like Demi said, baby steps. But for me, I would think another key thing is community. So just getting into like for example, if you're Christian, I can only talk Christian because I'm that's what I've understand. But like if you're in church and you have friends that go to church, or not even friends, like you just have people that go to church, speak to them and say like, how have you managed to do it? How, like asking them, letting them know like your what you're worried about, how people have responded, and in that community it can really help build you up. But then even on the work side, if you're in an organization that is big enough or has a Christian network or a faith-based network, go to that faith-based network, actually attend the things and speak to people who have maybe gone through situations that you have. That is a great place to get mentored or coached in certain things like that. And if you don't have a faith-based group in your organization, it may be on you to set one up. I was speaking to someone who recently who's in like a law firm, which is quite big. They don't have one at all. She knows 2 or 3 other people of the same faith as her, and they're setting something up, and that may be on you in that moment if you feel led to set something up like that, because it's within your firm's like value system and DEI and all of that kind of stuff. So do it. So I think community is so key. So if you can find at least even just one person that agrees with you and you can really like talk to them about this, I think that's so key, because you can't do it by yourself. If you tell someone, oh, I went to church on the weekend, and they're looking at you weird, you're by yourself, you're gonna feel really bad. It's gonna feel, you might not feel great. But if you're gonna speak to someone who can like encourage you in that, even just one person, that is really beneficial.
I would just like to even add on to that. From my own experience, I've been like involved in like these different networks at work and stuff. And because I've brought it up to like my one-on-ones with my manager, or I've brought it to team meetings, I've even had the opportunity to actually present about these different networks in our global team meetings. So that's another great example of like what Gabby said. going to these places or starting up these networks, but also don't keep it only to yourself. If you're comfortable with sharing it with your manager or sharing it with a wider platform than just people in your circle, that could also be another great way of making sure there's numbers, because with numbers, that's when you can pressure these big organizations as well to give more budget or resources or space or things like that.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure what else I can add, but completely agree with what was said, especially the point about community and reaching out to people. I mean, everyone who's sort of joined this call has already taken the first step, I feel like, in sort of trying to improve their workplace or learn a bit more about how to go about doing it. You know, all the people in the chat, you can reach out to them and maybe collectively discuss how you're going to sort of bring about that change within your company and see, maybe someone has already gone through that problem before and you can sort of learn from them, or maybe you have some knowledge that you're just not aware that you have. Yeah, I think that's the step that I would recommend, just sort of reaching out to some people, reaching out to anyone to sort of learn from what they've gone through. Obviously, with the size of the company, it differs. And I think if you just find that one person that you can sort of resonate with, and then what Gabrielle had said, like about if it doesn't exist, you can start that. Maybe the first step is finding out how many people in your company are from that religion, what are the challenges they face. You can, create a simple form and sort of share that around with people and sort of gather that data. And then from then on, you can know which are the biggest problems. For example, if it's a prayer facility, you can speak to the people who are in charge of managing the floor and try to find out maybe why they don't have a prayer facility. Maybe it's a lot more complex than you imagined, or maybe it's just not something people cared about. And then you can share that detail that you've already found from the form. Yeah, no, I feel like just first seeing who else is struggling is like a good first step. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely think all three of your points have been really, really valuable. I think if we could put it down to three, it could be small steps. That's one place to start. Just starting small. As Jibril said, you even coming along to a call like this today, it's a small step, but it's something. And I think the next one's community, as Gabrielle quite rightly put. If there's nothing there, create it. But there's strength in numbers. There's strength in taking that step out and being bold in creating something that I suppose can last once you're gone. And yeah, lastly, just being proactive in that. I think all three of those points are really, really valuable, and hopefully it resonates with some of you in the audience here today. So now we're about to wrap up with the session, and I'm going to see if we have any questions for any of the panelists. Do we have any questions? Okay, I just realized I can see it on my side. So we've got two questions here. So our first question is, do you feel like your relationship with faith at work has changed over time? Anyone can take it. It wasn't really directed at anyone.
I'd say for me, definitely, yeah. So I feel like as your actual faith grows, which over time it should or it would, it will change. So if you're first, like for example, if you're a Christian, if you're like a baby Christian, you may not want to tell anyone about it. But as you go along, you'll start being like, no, I'm a Christian, not just on Sundays, every single day. And then it will show up differently in your workplace. So I think it will, and you should expect that it should change over time. And if you go into another organization, it will change as well. So I don't think it will ever be the same, because if you're moving forward in your faith, it would change. And if you're moving up in your career, it would change. So I think that's something to expect.
Yeah, I think that's good response. If anyone else doesn't have anything to add, I'll go on to the next one. So someone's put that sometimes I feel I don't fully understand the religion and want to hear about it.
For the point about not understanding, maybe you can sort of essentially create like some slides or something that sort of educates them on what it is. Or if you're just having a one-to-one chat, you can just give them the high level overview and say, this is what it involves. These are the things that we don't do and what we do. I think, and then like if you've done that once, you can sort of package it up and just sort of repeat it. And it's sort of just one task, but it doesn't mean you have to sort of keep doing it over and over again. And then if they don't want to hear about it, I mean, I'm not sure if you guys have any thoughts on this one in terms of not wanting to hear. It's a bit.
I mean, from my first, I don't know if this is the right answer or not, but I would say you can't force someone to hear it, and that's absolutely fine. It doesn't mean that you have to shrink away from who you are. If no one wants to hear about it, so be it. But that doesn't mean if someone else brings it up, that doesn't mean you can't tell the next person because they haven't expressed that. You can't use one person's reaction, like generalize it to every single person in your workplace. That may just be them. Maybe they believe something different and that's why they don't want to hear it. Maybe. And then you can go to the next person or whoever comes up to you next to ask you more questions. Maybe they do want to hear it. So don't generalize that to everybody in the workplace. But also, if no one in the workplace wants to hear it, then keep it and don't allow it to shrink you in any way. That's why I don't know if that's a right answer, but that's my opinion at least.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Because even I think we were talking about, big organizations can have massive Christian networks, but just because you could be in a massive organization and someone in your team just really doesn't like people from your religion, or they've met someone that they really didn't like, and they could just be really horrible to you, doesn't mean that that reflects the whole organization. Or you could be part of a small organization which doesn't have an actual faith-based network, and the people in your team are so open and receptive about it. So this is going to happen in life. Like you'll be nice to people, they'll talk about you, you'll be horrible, they'll talk. So it's kind of like people may not want to hear it, but I think it's just about you knowing that this faith is important to you and kind of just standing on that and kind of preparing that in your mind and thinking, okay, people may not want to hear it. How am I going to respond if they don't receive it well? Just kind of just preparing for that, not being pessimistic, but just preparing so you're not shocked if you get like a certain look when you talk about your faith or something like that.
No, I definitely agree. And I think sometimes people just don't know what they don't know. So they block out things that they just simply don't understand because no one's even just taken 5 minutes to try and explain it to them. So in situations, sometimes don't just see it as a blocker. Perhaps someone who has their walls up, or you might sense a bit of curiosity there, but they shut it down. They may be genuinely interested in hearing more about faith, because even sometimes the people you would think, oh yeah, they don't go to church, they're not interested in that. You never know when you just actually take the time out to actually speak to that person. You might find that there's a real curiosity there or a real need there for God in their life. So I think on a more actionable step, I suppose, if your organization does have things such as networks dedicated to your religion, dedicated to faith, why not invite them along to one? Not in a pushy way, but open the door, because I also think being at work is a great opportunity for you to spread what your beliefs. It's a great opportunity to, let people know how God has helped you and helped to transform and change your life. So don't see it as a blocker. Instead, sometimes those blockers can be great opportunities as well. Amazing. Well, is there any other questions? I don't believe there is. Is there anything else in the chat? Amazing. Well, we're going to wrap up the conversation here. I just want to say thank you so much for the panelists that we've had on today. I think all of your contributions have been really valuable and also actionable in terms of steps that can be taken for those who are still on that journey of being more bold in their faith in the work, being more bold about their faith in the workplace. So thank you so much for your contributions. And for any of the audience here, if you would like to connect with any of our panelists, I've got their LinkedIn's up on the screen at the moment also, but it's been a fantastic conversation. If any of you want to continue on with any of the speakers that we've heard from today, feel free to connect with them on LinkedIn and continue those conversations further. And we'll also be hopefully sending out some feedback forms to get some feedback on you and how you found today's session. So thank you so much for joining.